This is Larry Henry at Gambling.com. Welcome to The Edge. I'm joined by Chairman Christopher Hebert, Chairman of the Louisiana Gaming Control Board, graduate of two outstanding universities in Baton Rouge, LSU and Southern, has been on the job for about a year and a half. Came after Chairman Ronnie Johns, and from the Attorney General's office, by the way. Long years in gaming and in law. Chairman Hebert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Larry. It's a pleasure for me to be here, talking to you, and having learned that you're actually what I'll call a homeboy from Louisiana. It's always a pleasure when I get to talk to folks from Louisiana about any topic. So,
well, we just need to be sure we don't break into a hot boudin, cold couscous. Nobody will know what we're doing. And by the way, growing up in Baton Rouge, I spent a ton of time. Chairman Hebert's from New Roads up at False River. You're not going to meet nicer people than the people around False River. If hunting, fishing, outdoor sports and so forth, beautiful area up there just north of Baton Rouge. Chairman Hebert, first of all, congratulations on being named Gambling.com's Regulator of the Year for our American Gambling Awards. Very well-deserved honor, and it really reflects what's happened. Louisiana is by far one of the most gaming active states in the country. Everything from brick and mortar sports betting to online sports betting, brick and mortar casinos, video slot machines in truck stops in thousands of locations, horse tracks with racinos that have slots, very active gaming environment that you came to with a lot of experience in gaming. Let me ask you, in the year and a half or so that you've had that role, the chairmanship, what are some of the successes that you look back on, and what are some of the challenges ahead as the entire gaming landscape changes, not just in nationally, but in Louisiana too?
Yeah, Larry, well, first of all, thank you. Look, the award was quite the surprise, being that I am just a year or so in, but that is a testament to the hard work of a lot of people. My board staff, the other members of the board, as well as those hardworking men and women at Louisiana State Police, who serves as our enforcement arm, and the Attorney General's office that serves as our statutory counsel. But this past year actually we saw record economic impact from regulated gaming in Louisiana, and the gaming revenues reached nearly $2,009 million in June of 2025, and that's up almost 6% from the prior year. Our major accomplishments include our advances in, I think, our regulatory insight, if you will, our oversight. The continued transition of our riverboat casinos to landside operations, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but also the implementation of strong suitability and anti-corruption screening. We take that very seriously here in this state. I think we have a good track record in that area, and we want to continue to do so. But those are our notable improvements. And then also in regard to responsible gaming initiatives, the board has met with our Department of Health. We continue to meet with other stakeholders. There are some products that I cannot talk about just yet, but Louisiana has some very innovative things that are coming out in the area of responsible gaming. And we're utilizing the same technology that our operators are using in the gaming space, some of the Know Your Customer tools. We're going to use some of those in the responsible gaming area as well. And the board has also prioritized adapting technology and interagency coordination. For instance, we just revamped our website to make it more user-friendly for our operators. But we want to do those things in order to better safeguard compliance and promote transparency in our state. Now, as far as some of our challenges, I think one of our biggest challenges, and this is not a challenge just for our state, it's a global challenge. As regulators, one of our biggest challenges is responding to fast-changing technology. We have to balance innovation with security and the potential risks from emerging unregulated gaming platforms. But where it comes to regulated gaming platforms, for instance, we have our operators wanting to use cryptocurrency, for example. And so we invited someone who is an expert in cryptocurrency, to come just last week to talk to our jurisdiction. And I know that the person is going around speaking to other jurisdictions about cryptocurrency so that we can educate ourselves as we move forward in discussions. The board is also very attentive to underage gambling trends and the impact of natural disasters or economic shifts on compliance and operations. And so those are just some of the challenges that we're going to face going forward.
Yeah, let me, and that kind of segues into the 5-year anniversary of sports betting,
Right.
including online sports betting, kicked off under Chairman Ronnie John's leadership several years ago.
Yeah.
Assess the assess how that's been. What has been the success of online and brick and mortar uh, sports betting?
Well, our journey with online sports wagering, since legalization has been a significant success in my eyes. I was at the Attorney General's office. I was the director of gaming there when we passed sports wagering. And the state sports betting handle and tax revenue grew consistently, with February of this year alone yielded $381 million in wagers and $7 million in tax revenue, which was a record month in our state's history. And look, we were blessed to have the Super Bowl here, and I know that contributed. But our total player winnings exceeded $10 billion as of last month, and those key successes include a robust growth in both our retail and our online channels, and that was a concern. Some folks thought that the online market would cannibalize the retail market. I'm sure you've heard that argument before, Larry. But we saw robust growth in both areas. We've got strong consumer engagement, and in my opinion, the state has an effective regulatory approach. Now, we do have some areas for improvement. We have to further enhance our consumer protections. We have to have more targeted measures against problem gambling. And we have to streamline our cross jurisdictional enforcement as our neighboring states evolve with legal offerings. I have a great relationship with the executive director of the Mississippi Gaming Commission. Jay and I, we converse very often, and where we can share things that'll help our jurisdictions, we'll do that. We recognize that we are competitors, but we're friendly competitors, if you will, from a regulatory standpoint. We have very common goals, and we both want to see our state succeed, and we want to keep the bad actors out. But the board is also reviewing the efficiency of our tax allocations and ongoing educational outreach to maximize our community benefits as we rolled out sports wagering. I am in constant communication with our Department of Health. I'm in constant communication with our Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gaming. I actually started a program to educate our consumers when I was at the Attorney General's office, and I say in close communication with Dawn Email, who is the current director, as they continue with that program. And so I would call our 5 years of sports wagering a massive success.
Well, and considering you recall back to the vote, 9 parishes. For those not familiar with the structure of Louisiana, parishes are counties in other states. 9 parishes elected not to have sports betting. So that robust figure includes 9 of 64 that
That's
don't
right.
even have. And as I understand it, there's no move to even legalizing those non-parishes. So that even includes them off the table.
Right. That's absolutely right. It's not even a full picture of the state. And then you also have to factor in that we also have tribal casinos whose numbers are not counted in when we're tallying the growth. But I would say that they themselves have seen some growth as well. So it's been an enormous success for our state.
Interesting what you said too about how your online is not cannibalizing your brick and mortar, because that has become an issue in other states too. And I know we'll talk about prediction markets and things like that, which is sort of
Sure.
changed the dynamic. Before we get to there, as you go forward, legislative session coming up in Baton Rouge, you are extremely familiar with the halls of the Capitol and lawmakers. what do you guys? Is there anything on your plate, the board, and just gaming? In other words, gaming in general. Is iGaming on the table? Online casinos? Is there something that's on the table that we can look forward to being a big issue next session?
Yeah, that's a good question, Larry. And just from the board's perspective, and I'll say that rarely does the board itself introduce legislation. There have been times where we have wanted to do some things, but our industry, our stakeholders, both from our casino and video poker industries, have done a good job of introducing that type of legislation. In certain instances, they will come to the board to make sure that we don't have an issue, and we're very appreciative of that because it helps us to work better and to implement those changes better when the stakeholders do come in on the front end and speak to us about those issues. And I think it's a testament to the manner in which we communicate with our stakeholders here. We don't take a closed door approach here in our state. And what we have found is that our stakeholders, both those who are homegrown and those who are national corporations, really appreciate that approach and feel like they can come and speak to us about those issues. You ask a really good question about iGaming. Your guess is as good as mine. We did have legislative hearings late last year regarding iGaming. And one of the interesting things that came out of that is that the industry itself, the casino industry itself, is not in fully in lockstep with each other. There are some operators who would prefer not to have iGaming. And so I think that will probably be a hindrance to having iGaming here unless casino operators can find some common ground. Uh, that's going to be a hindrance. As you well know, we do have a lot of verticals here, and some of our other verticals, such as the video poker industry, the charitable gaming industry, look to iGaming as a threat to those particular verticals. And so, as regulator, we do take a neutral stance when it comes to those things. When we did have the hearings I think it was last December, I did take the table. The first thing out of my mouth was, I am not here to say I'm for or against iGaming, but I did want to help to spell some of the myths that come, with iGaming. For instance, just as I just spoke about in the online versus brick and mortar sports wagering space, you hear the arguments that iGaming is going to come in and cannibalize the brick and mortar casino space. But what we have seen in other jurisdictions is that is not necessarily the case, that it actually can help to grow the brick and mortar market. But as to whether we're going to have legislation, I just can't answer that. I do think we may see some things around continued regulation, possible new legislation regarding sweepstakes casinos and social gaming products, if you will. We'll also monitor for competitive pressures particularly from our surrounding states. As Texas, decided not to pass any form of gaming, that'll give us at least a 2-year reprieve there. But we do have some other neighboring states that are considering gaming. Our neighbors, Mississippi, have a very limited online sports wagering platform right now. I think it's confined to within the brick and mortar spaces, and I know that they've been looking to move out of that and make it a statewide proposition. So we always monitor those things, and also, we may see some issues regarding advanced technology-driven compliance measures that I previously spoke about, and in some surrounding enhancing our responsible gaming programs. I think our legislature, as well as our Department of Health, and certainly the board, recognize that we have got to keep up with technology, not only from an operator perspective, but also from the way that we are responding to the needs of our citizens in the responsible gaming and problem gaming spaces.
Yeah, and let me. I want to ask you about competitive pressures from Texas. I used to talk to Chairman Johns about that all the time, especially Lake Charles' robust market, largely because of the Mattress Max of the world. And in a second, but you brought up something that I want to ask you about real quickly,
Sure.
Chairman Hebert. As you look at continuing, disruptive issues that crop up, one of the ones with the recent mafia poker NBA sports betting issue has been prop bets.
Right.
Um, and I know, as with iGaming, you don't know what's going to happen, who's going to come before the board, or what's going to happen legislatively. Clearly, that would be a crystal ball thing. But is there any buzz in Louisiana right now? Any effort? Are you hearing anything at the street level of an effort on prop bets? I know the argument on one side is, look, if you ban prop bets at regulated sports books, folks are going to go overseas. It's not going to stop the prop bet offerings.
Mhm.
That's one argument. There's all sort of issues around that. Are you hearing anything on a street level about prop bets?
Not as currently, and we dealt with our own controversies here in Louisiana, the Keyshawn Butte matter, for instance, with LSU, and I know that that caused us to take a look at some things and ban some in-game wagering on college sports. Not as of yet, but those are things that we actually continuously monitor. On a weekly basis, I'm making some decision, on a certain bet, or we get our operators are constantly sending in events. For instance, the upcoming Jake Paul matter, where I just made a decision that we're not going to carry. We're not going to allow betting on that. I just wasn't comfortable with, just based on some of the rules, some of the recent history and some of the controversy surrounding Jake Paul fights. Just was not comfortable offering that particular fight. So that is an ongoing thing. And while I may not have heard anything, in the past few days, it doesn't mean that in the next few that I won't have those conversations. That's something that I'm always having conversations with the AG's office, with state police. I will always pick up the phone and talk to other jurisdictions, which I think is a great thing. I'm starting to see more and more of that. That regulators from different jurisdictions are starting to we're starting to talk to each other about these issues. And so, as again, the Jake Paul fight is a perfect example. Some of the jurisdictions that did disallow betting on that fight, I actually called those jurisdictions to find out what went into their thinking in disallowing it, and also some of those that did allow it. And so I always want to make an educated guess in those areas. We also we don't want to hurt our operators. It's very delicate balance when it comes to that, and we certainly don't want to drive our citizens in Louisiana to the illegal market. That's the last thing that we want to do, but we have to be responsible about how we do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Remind me, and I apologize for a memory lapse. Remind me what the in-game betting ban was. You mentioned a
What,
second ago, but
yeah, we
I'm sorry.
have an in-game ban on college sports,
Yeah,
on prop bets. And it's just like I said, it was as a result of the Keyshawn Butte controversy, where he was actually betting on games that he was playing in.
yeah,
And so, to kind of take some of that temptation off of the table, we decided in Louisiana, and the NCAA, asked I think it was a countrywide ask on the
yeah,
part of
yeah.
the NCAA that we do that. And so, we did take a listen to that, and again, sometimes you have to get stung, in order to understand the ramifications of things. And unfortunately, that's what happened here in Louisiana. And so we thought that it was a wise decision for us to pull that.
I remember that. Are y'all hearing from athletes? Are they getting harassed by bettors and stuff like that, or is it everything pretty much running smoothly?
We are not hearing that, but that is not stopping me from actively pushing for more education in that space. As you well know, the NCAA has recently backtracked and is allowing college students to now bet on professional sports. And, from a regulatory standpoint, that certainly is something that gives me pause. With the advent of NIL, you finally have an avenue for these athletes to, earn money, while they're in college. You certainly don't want to do it want them to do it strictly for the benefit of the sports betting platforms. And you're dealing with teenagers, and
Yeah.
they don't always make the best decisions. And so, as much as we can educate them, we're gonna do that. And again, working with our Department of Health here, and other stakeholders in order to get that done. While we haven't heard that uh, that's out there. There's certainly things in the works. There are ongoing investigations in college sports. That it happens, and so we want to put our athletes in the best uh, place, through education, so that if and when someone does approach them, to do something nefarious, they can make an informed decision as to why they should not.
And the bettors will know that the games aren't rigged. I
That's
mean,
right. That's
bettors know that
exactly right.
it's a clean bet,
Right. That's right.
which all bettors want to know.
Right.
Thank you so much. Let me touch real quickly, if we can, on a couple of things that we mentioned briefly. One, the Riverboat Casino to landside issue, and another one on regional pressures from other states.
Sure.
Update me, if you would, Chairman Hebert, on how many riverboats have gone ashore and have
Sure.
gone inside, and are there more in the hopper?
Sure. So, yeah, I think this is another overwhelming success for our state. When you talk about in 2019, our legislature passed a law to allow our riverboat casinos to move landside, and so this was a really something really great for what I call our first generation riverboats. And so we have had four now: Horseshoe Lake Charles, the Queen Baton Rouge. Horseshoe came online or landside in December of 2022. The Queen here in Baton Rouge came online or landside in August of 2023. Treasure Chest Casino in Kenner, Louisiana, came online in June of last year. And most recently, the Live Casino and Hotel, Louisiana in Bossier, came online in February of this year. And, that has been a really a great showing for our state. We went from having riverboats that have very limited capacity to have any entertainment value, to now resort style casinos where you can bring the entire family. Even if no one gambles, you can go and see a concert. You can go to a spa. Most people who are outside of the gaming world don't realize that amenities make up a large percentage of profits for the casinos. They create more jobs, for citizens of the state. And so it has been an overwhelming success as we've seen our casinos transition, from riverboat to landside. And that's not to mention the safety issue with having riverboats, on the rivers such as the Mississippi River, where you have barges and barge traffic. Larry, you may remember, the Horseshoe was formerly Isle of Capri in Lake Charles, and that riverboat during one of our previous hurricanes actually broke away and hit one of our interstates.
Yeah.
And so, there the benefits are endless, and not to mention we've seen profits go up at each of those profits of those properties that have decided to go landside, and our fifth will go landside here in December of this year, as the former Belle of Baton Rouge is rebranding as a Bally's Casino, and they'll open up in December of this year. We're
So
very excited about that.
yeah, it looks like it says here we got 15 riverboat licenses. Correct? Do you anticipate more of those after these initial five, or more looking at it? Or clearly they'd have to go before the Gaming Control Board and talk to you all about it. But are there more coming on board down the line, do you think?
I absolutely anticipate that. I've had some preliminary discussions with multiple operators. No names that I could share. You can share. I don't want to steal their thunder in that way. Once they decide that they are going to make announcements, but certainly, whenever you do have, for instance, I'll say in Bossier City, you have a shiny new casino in Live that's doing well, and inevitably it's going to pull some market share from some of the other casinos. And I think for those reasons, you're going to have operators, not only because of that, but because they see the success, not only of live, but of the others that I mentioned that have gone landside, and as we all know, competition is always good. It breeds success. And so we're going to see, certainly, I think, in the Shreveport Bossier market. I think not only because of live, but because of the prospect of potential gaming in Texas. We also have Oklahoma that is pulling, some of the market because it's closer to Dallas, quite frankly, than Bossier City is in Shreveport. And so we always are going to look to improve. We also are going to look for economic development. And so, certainly in that area, you're going to see some movement.
Talking about Texas and places like that, Louisiana right now, you got Arkansas, which has legal
That's right.
mobile sports betting, but as you mentioned, just some on-site mobile in Mississippi, not statewide mobile. Texas, nothing.
Right.
They don't have any legal sports betting. Although people like Mark Cuban and Jerry Jones and Tillman Fertitta and people like that, or Sands, a corporation out of Las Vegas, they keep pushing at the Texas legislature for it.
Right.
Ronnie Johns used to point out to me, the former chairman, senator from Lake Charles, as you know, good friend of yours,
Mhm.
that the Lake Charles market really benefits Houston, fourth largest metropolitan area in the country. A lot of
That's
people
right.
from the Mattress Max and everybody else goes over to Lake Charles.
That's right.
Is if Texas, Oklahoma still doesn't have legal sports betting.
That's right.
Do you the cities, the markets near Texas? You mentioned Shreveport, Bossier, Lake Charles, horse track. I want to talk to you real quickly about the health of the horse racing industry in Louisiana too. Do you anticipate if Texas does come online, is that gonna pull back on some of the revenue going into Louisiana?
Yeah, I do feel that some impact is likely, especially in the border markets. As you mentioned, you have Houston, you also have Dallas, and many people don't realize Lake Charles, with three casinos, is our best performing region
Yeah,
in our state. In which is amazing when you look at a Shreveport Bossier, which has twice the number of properties, not to mention a racetrack there.
yeah.
And so. But Houston, they rely heavily on the Houston market, as does Shreveport Bossier on the Dallas market. So there is going to be some impact with those border markets, where Texas Play currently contributes to our casinos and our sports books. It's well documented that Mattress Mac came over and made the first wager, a pretty substantial wager, uh, when Horseshoe Lake Charles first opened up. So, but that cross border effect is well documented in Southwest Louisiana. But that said, Louisiana's advantages are our established operators, our fan affinity, as you well know, market capture is huge, and so you saw a mad scramble amongst our operators to capture that market. It's really difficult to come into a market after the fact and pull, customers away from a product that they understand.
Yeah.
And as well as what we just talked about with our landside facilities, which are destination properties. I feel like those things, even if we gain new competition, are going to be the things that keep us competitive and position us to maintain or to retain a significant share of our market.
That's a good point, and you mentioned they are resorts, beautiful golf courses and so
Yeah,
forth. Yeah, talked about the horse tracks real quickly. I know the racing commission deals with racing issues, but it did crop up last year
sure.
with the fairgrounds, historic horse track,
Yes.
Louisiana Downs and everything. There were some issues with historical horse racing machines.
Yes.
What's the health of the horse racing industry in Louisiana in general, and the whole issue of you got to have the historic horse racing machines, you got to have slots, you got to have all that robust, so that purses are attractive enough to have good races. What's going on with the horse? Got four good tracks. What's going on with the industry in the state?
Sure, and I have a very unique perspective in that, I was in the middle of the historical horse racing litigation as director at the AG's office, and I will say, the AG's office, um, like I said, we were in the middle of that because we represented, and by we I mean the AG's office represented both the Gaming Control Board, or represent both the Gaming Control Board as well as the gaming commission, or the racing commission, excuse me. And fortunately for the racing industry, historical horse racing machines were declared unconstitutional in Louisiana a few months ago, and as a result of that, all of those machines had to be removed, from our state. That said, each one of the tracks is allowed to have um, slot machines. The off-track betting facilities are allowed to have video poker machines as well, and that is a robust industry for the tracks. Um, I know that we have a governor who is uh, concerned about the health of the racing industry and wants to do whatever he can to help that industry. I know that there was a bill that was just passed to allow fixed odds horse wagering on the actual casino floor, with 5% of the net proceeds of that actually dedicated to purse supplements. And so you have a governor, you have a legislature, and a racing commission that are all looking at ways to help the horse racing industry. You even had the racing industry and video poker industry working together, if you will, to come up with something that would work for both industries. And that has not always been the case in our state. As we talked about earlier, verticals tend to be very protective, when it comes to wanting to do anything for another vertical, if you will.
Yeah.
But we found that, I guess in the aftermath of the unconstitutionality finding for historical horse racing, what we have found is that we've kind of come together as a state to attempt to help the industry to grow. And so I think as long as you have the current governor in place, that'll continue to be the case.
Yeah, thanks for the update. I really do appreciate that. I know that got real, at what point it looked like the fairgrounds, 1837 or something. I'm not sure what the actual opening date was, but it's been around it's one of the most historic tracks in the country. And I know there was some concern over that. Let me ask you a couple more things, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I know you have a very busy schedule, but I really appreciate the update. I want to talk about prediction markets and sweepstakes real quickly. And then, as
Sure.
two LSU guys, uh, whose phones are blowing up with texts about
Absolutely.
about about the coaching situation. I want to ask you if there's anything that the regulators need to keep an eye on as all that turmoil goes on. But let me ask you first, before we get to the coaching turmoil that you and I probably both have personal passions about, but also it's also become a national issue now.
Sure.
First, prediction markets and sweepstakes. Where is Louisiana, Chairman, on prediction markets? As everybody knows, they're in all 50 states. They're not regulated, not taxed, but you got the Texases and Californias that don't have legal sports betting. Georgia and the states we just mentioned. You can go on right now,
Right.
Kalshi and other prediction markets, and basically arguably place a sports bet.
Hmm.
Where is Louisiana on prediction markets and sweepstakes?
Well, Louisiana has not authorized uh, consumer prediction market platforms in our state, and any offering here would require compliance with federal law and state licensure and approval. Several operators, as you well know, Larry, are still navigating the national regulatory and court processes. Several states have sued, and we are closely monitoring what's going on with those things as well. Again, with the sweepstakes casinos and sports books, the board has taken aggressive action, as you well know, issued over 40 cease and desist letters this summer. And, I'm happy to report that as a result of that, brands are exiting Louisiana. And that's something we're very proud of. And we're going to continue to, enforcement. We work closely with our state police where appropriate, and with our attorney general's office on this issue. And we're constantly looking to seek legislative tools as well where necessary to protect our consumers. We had a very robust bill that unfortunately was vetoed by the governor. But he is, despite the fact that he vetoed that bill because he thought we had the tools in place already. And we continue to work with our Attorney General's office. Liz Muriel has been a champion for wanting to keep bad actors or unregulated actors out of our state. And so we're going to continue to work with her. We're going to continue to look for ways to disrupt the illegal market in our state, and we're going to be as vigilant can be.
That may tie into, and thank you for that update. That may tie into, and I don't mean to make light of it because clearly it's a serious issue with a lot of money
Sure.
involved, and a lot of fan interest. You and I both are LSU graduates, and we
Yes.
understand, as everybody does. You don't have to be an LSU graduate. A lot of coaching carousels this year, especially, and a lot of big buyouts and things like that going on. But uh, there may be some concerns when there's turmoil in the athletic world about possible betting irregularities, possible because some people taking advantage of some of these confusions over betting on who the next coach could be, and even, big games coming up with Alabama and Arkansas and Oklahoma for LSU. Still got a big SEC schedule to go with an interim
Sure.
coach. So you may have some people who may wonder whether bettors are going to try to take advantage of turmoil. Are there some things that I know you guys aren't involved in a selection of a coach and all that. But are there some things as regulators you need to keep an eye on during turmoil like this to assure that there's no irregularity that's going on in terms of betting?
Yeah, we're always looking for those types of things. We're looking for irregularities on a constant basis. I have to thank our folks at state police who, they oftentimes get calls. The board will get calls about potential irregularities. State police oftentimes will get calls about irregularities, and they do a good job of investigating those things. But, Larry, one of the things that I thought about, when all of this, came about, despite my own personal heartache about losing the Vanderbilt and the like.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's
don't
not
like.
good. Yeah, it's not good for
Yeah,
LSU Nation. Yeah.
that's right. It's not good for us as fans. It gives me heartburn. But we recently had an incident to stray away from gaming for a second here, where we had inmates who escaped from a jail in New Orleans, and the prediction markets were actually taking bets on who's going to be caught first and the like of those things.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
I would bet you that some of those same prediction markers are going to take bets on who the next LSU coach is going to be, or perhaps who the finalists are going to be for the job and those things. And it underscores why we need to maintain a regulatory market at the statewide level. Because certainly there are going to be individuals who have insider information as
Yeah.
to who the finalists are going to be, as to who the next coach is going to be, and those things. And certainly those individuals are going to pass on that information to news reporters.
Yeah.
They're going to pass on that information possibly to friends.
Yeah.
So those friends can take that information and go and place a bet, place a wager. And one of the things that you don't find in the state regulated market is that type of thing. We pride ourselves on making sure that there is integrity, working with leagues and working with other stakeholders so that our consumers know that the games that they are betting on are being played in a fair manner. And those are some of the protections that you don't have in the prediction markets, and why you're seeing some of our states filing suit. Not to mention certain tax implications or the lack thereof. The states aren't getting any tax revenue from this. And as our consumers move to those markets, let's say a consumer decides, hey, I don't want to bet with a regulated entity in Louisiana. I want to bet with a prediction market. Well, that's tax revenue that the state doesn't have for education, for healthcare, and those types of things. So yes, we are always looking for those types of irregularities, and not only looking for them, but we're going to fight them where we find them.
And right now, in the regulated markets in Louisiana, you can't bet on who the next LSU coach would be, or
That's right.
yeah. So that is definitely out there. And especially, I know the governor's weighed in on it, and a lot of people are weighing in on it. I mean, you and I both grew up in Louisiana. It's not just unique to Louisiana. It's college sports, pro sports. Clearly, a lot of passions, and
Sure.
we know firsthand sort of what's going on in a state and a school like you and I went to. So, I really do appreciate it, Mr. Hebert. Any final thoughts on? That you want to convey. And again, congratulations, very well deserved. American Gambling Awards, Gambling.com's American Gambling Awards, Regulator of the Year. You can see why you guys are running an outstanding integrity field operation in Louisiana. What final thoughts on what the future is in Louisiana on gaming, sports betting, and casino?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you, Larry, again for the congratulations. And again, I'll state that's something that I can't take personal thanks in without thanking others. There are a lot of hardworking men and women in our gaming industry, our gaming regulatory industry, and I accept that award on their behalf proudly. But as we move forward, in our sports wagering and possibly iGaming, as well as our brick and mortar casino, video poker, and all of the verticals that are in this state and fall under the jurisdiction of the board. I'm really excited about the prospects of our state growing gaming, based on some of the things that we've talked about. As our operators continue to reinvest in our state, and I have to say a thank you to them as well. Because I know that we're competing with other jurisdictions, for their dollars when they decide to reinvest in our state. But as you see that reinvestment in our state, as you see our legislature pay more and better attention, which I have seen over the past few years, to gaming, and not only from a financial standpoint and a tax revenue standpoint, but from a standpoint of protection of our consumers, I feel like we're doing things the right way in Louisiana, and I'm very encouraged by that. And I only see us attaining more success as we continue to achieve in those different areas.
I really appreciate it, Chairman Hebert. I have to close by saying thank you very much, and I have to close as a couple of LSU guys. I have to close with Go Tigers.
Go Tigers!
Thank you, and I want to thank everybody else for watching us today. I'm Larry Henry at Gambling.com. Thank you for watching us on The Edge.
Thank you.